something as wonderful secrets. It also looks like it's almost like a fan fiction conversation between whoever wrote this and Jeffrey Epstein. It's very strange. And I anticipate President Trump is going to continue to deny that's him. I, of course, have no inside knowledge whether it is or not. But, this, even if it is him, it really just reinforces something we already know, which is Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were associates. They were friendly. They socialized together. We've seen the video thousands of times of the two of them dancing at that party, purportedly leering at women and discussing the women. So this isn't really anything new that in the 90s and early 2000s, Jeffrey Epstein associated with Donald Trump and many other very high-profile and powerful individuals. That was really his MO. So certainly the letter is odd, and I think creepy is probably the best word to describe it. Whether it's Donald Trump or not, I'm sure he will deny. But it doesn't really give us that much information that we don't already know.
Okay, so I want to ask you about something that we don't know, which is this extraordinary press conference last week with all of these accusers. Has DOJ contacted you as a lawyer who represents several of them to talk to any of the victims that you represent?
That's an emphatic no. I have not been reached out to by anyone in the DOJ or any government official, anyone from this administration. And that's pretty much a pattern of what's been happening for decades, which is the government and law enforcement has completely neglected, forgot about, and I could even say re-victimized these survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, whether it was the sweetheart deal and the travesty of justice in 2008, where there was actually a specific instruction from Alex Acosta not to notify the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes or Jeffrey Epstein's accusers, of course, allowing Jeffrey Epstein to commit suicide in his own federal custody. And then, of course, giving Ghislaine Maxwell a sweetheart deal and moving her to a minimum security resort and giving her a platform to deny. The victims and the survivors and their representatives were not considered during any of that. There was never any discussion. There was never any reaching out to them to see how they feel about any of this. And in fact, there was a concerted effort not to, which is so appalling, and it's really offensive to someone like me who represents these survivors, but really to the survivors. Anyone who watched the rally on the Capitol steps or saw the other rally for the survivors that I spoke at, I can't imagine anyone seeing that and not wanting to reach out and finally getting the victims and the survivors' perspective on all this.
And just really quickly, you're in touch with other lawyers, I presume. Have they told you if DOJ has reached out to talk to their clients?
Not to my knowledge. And we keep hearing about all these meetings and strategy meetings and conversations that this administration and the Department of Justice are having to discuss how to handle these files. Something that has been jarringly missing from these meetings is a representative of the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
So after these survivors came together, they got a really positive public response to their courage to be public. You could see how difficult it was for them to do that. How are victims talking now about their hopes for what will come of their banding together and demanding justice? What does that look like for them?
Well, there's sort of two sides to it. One thing I certainly agree with you. It was a extremely empowering moment for both rallies and press conferences to see so many survivors of Jeffrey Epstein stand in solidarity. The survivor I was actually with, one of my clients, this was the first time she'd ever appeared publicly as a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. So that was a really special moment for her and for me. So there's a lot of, hope and positivity and empowerment. But on the other side, there's also a lot of negativity because they've been empowered and they've been advocating for decades and nothing has happened and they continue to be forgotten and re-victimized. And there is no indication that this administration or this Department of Justice is changing their tune on being 100% transparent, which is, of course, releasing these files and giving these survivors the accountability and the exposure and ultimately the closure they deserve.
The victims